Usually when you go to see a magic show, there's this like implicit, unspoken agreement between you and the illusionist on the stage.
Right, yeah. You're there to be fooled.
Exactly. You sit out there in the dark, they stand up there in the spotlight, and you just willingly let them trick you. The magic only works, the illusion only holds up if you never look at the wires, or, the trapdoor, or the sheer amount of sweat pouring down the magician's forehead.
I like the labor behind the trick.
Yeah, and the 1920s they were the ultimate magic trick. And today, we are going completely backstage. Okay, let's unpack this. We are taking F. Scott Fitzgerald's masterpiece, The Great Gatsby, specifically the vast majority of the text, right from the opening pages up to the tragic aftermath in Chapter 9. And we are treating it not as a, standard high school book summary, but as a literal autopsy report on the American dream. We're going to deconstruct the glittering, champagne-soaked facade of the Roaring Twenties to understand the deeply human mechanics of ambition, the absolute illusion of identity, and, the brutal, unforgiving reality of status and wealth.
What's fascinating here is how the text provides us with a dual narrative that operates almost like a sleight-of-hand trick itself. On the surface, we're tracking the real-time visceral events of the summer of 1922.
Right, the heat and the parties.
Exactly. We feel the oppressive heat, we hear the jazz spilling out of the mansions, we experience the reckless driving. But running underneath that surface narrative, like this dark, inevitable current, is the slow, deliberate unraveling of the histories behind these characters. Specifically, we're watching the deeply guarded, mysterious past of Jay Gatsby himself being, dismantled piece by piece.
It is quite the journey. We'll be moving from the impossibly opulent mansions of Long Island to the desolate industrial wasteland known as the Valley of Ashes. We're going to drag you through wild sensory overload parties and then into these suffocating, claustrophobic hotel rooms in New York City.
It's quite a whiplash.
It really is. And it's all to uncover exactly what happens when a human being tries to literally bend reality to fit an impossible dream. And to even begin to understand that journey, we have to look at the person holding the camera. Everything we see, every mansion, every party, every tragedy, is entirely filtered through the highly specific and, frankly, completely contradictory lens of Nick Carraway.
Yeah, the narrator's framing is just everything here. Nick sets the stage by sharing a piece of advice his father gave him in his, quote, younger and more vulnerable years.
Right.
His father told him, whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you've had. And from this single memory, Nick builds his entire persona for us. He claims that, as a result of this advice, he is inclined to reserve all judgments.
Oh, yeah.
He paints himself as this uniquely tolerant, neutral observer, like a safe harbor where wild, unknown men just naturally confess their deepest secrets.
Okay, I have to stop you right there because I look at Nick like a modern-day documentary filmmaker. You know the exact type I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
They step in front of the camera and swear they're just a fly on the wall, purely objective, just capturing the unvarnished truth. But then you actually watch the documentary, and it is so overwhelmingly clear they are manipulating the editing, adjusting the musical cues, choosing specific camera angles to make the audience completely fall in love with a deeply flawed protagonist.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Right, because Nick is editing the footage of 1922 for us. He claims to reserve judgment, but then proceeds to fiercely and intensely judge absolutely everyone he meets. Everyone, that is, except for Gatsby.
Yeah, the hypocrisy is immediate, isn't it? He boasts about his infinite tolerance, but in the exact same breath admits his tolerance has a strict limit. He tells us that after coming back from the East, he wanted the world to be in uniform and at a sort of moral attention forever.
Wow.
Right. And Nick is actually repelled by the type of person Gatsby is. Gatsby is a flashy new money bootlegger, an associate of criminals. He represents everything for which Nick has an unaffected scorn. Yet Nick exempts him. He admits there was something gorgeous about him, a heightened sensitivity to the promises of life. He compares Gatsby to one of those intricate machines that register earthquakes 10,000 miles away.
So I struggle with this a little bit. If Nick is so supposedly tolerant, why does he find someone like Tom Buchanan so immediately, viscerally repulsive? He actually says his instinct was to telephone the police during a dinner party, yet he ends up giving Gatsby a total pass for being essentially a mobster.
Well, it comes down to the mechanism of their motivations. Tom Buchanan operates purely on appetite. It's a consumption of food, of power, of other women, of space.
Yep.
There's no soul in it. It's just a biological urge to dominate.
Right. Just taking up space.
Exactly. Gatsby, despite his criminal bootlegging, operates on a profound, almost religious sense of hope. His entire existence is dedicated to a singular transcendent dream. And Nick, coming from a prominent Midwestern family, fought in World War I and came back feeling that his home was the ragged edge of the universe.
He's restless.
Deeply restless. He's searching for meaning in the East. He sees in Tom the absolute dead end of material wealth, having everything and believing in nothing. But he sees in Gatsby a reflection of his own desperate need for something, anything, to believe in. It's a reflection of the broader post-World War I societal disillusionment. The old world burned down in the trenches of Europe, and now they're desperately searching for a new frontier.
And that makes the map of this world so crucial, because the geography isn't just setting, it's a moral landscape. The text splits the wealth of Long Island into two enormous eggs jutting out into the Sound, East Egg and West Egg. And they might look identical to the seagulls flying overhead, but on the ground, they operate under completely different laws of physics.
Completely different.
East Egg is old money. It's the home of Tom and Daisy Buchanan. It's white palaces, polo ponies, and generational wealth. West Egg, where Nick and Gatsby live, is explicitly described as the less fashionable of the two. It's the land of the newly rich. People who made their fortunes yesterday and are spending it today in the loudest, most aggressive way possible.
To truly understand the power dynamics at play, we have to look closely at the dinner Nick attends at the Buchanan's house in East Egg. It is a masterclass in the nature of old money.
Oh, that dinner is so uncomfortable.
It really is. The East Eggers possess a careless, devastating privilege. They don't just have wealth, they have the impenetrable armor of social history. When Tom Buchanan is introduced, the text doesn't focus on his intellect or his charm. It focuses on his sheer, brute physical presence.
Right.
Nick knew him at Yale, where Tom was a football star, reaching an acute limited excellence at 21. And now Tom is 30, with a supercilious manner and a cruel body. The text specifies it was a body capable of enormous leverage. You can literally see the muscles shifting under his coat.
But that physical dominance is a shield, right? Because during that same dinner, Tom starts violently ranting about a pseudoscientific book he's reading called The Rise of the Colored Empires. He is panicked that the white race will be utterly submerged.
Exactly. It completely unmasks his profound intellectual insecurity. Despite his immense wealth and his overwhelming physical power, Tom is terrified of losing his dominant position in society. He needs this racist science to justify his supremacy because deep down he senses his own obsolescence.
He knows his time is running out.
Exactly. The world is changing rapidly in the 1920s. New money is rising, different classes are mingling, and Tom's inherited superiority is suddenly feeling very fragile. He tells everyone they are Nordics, and they've produced all the things that make civilization, desperately clinging to a hierarchy that puts him at the very top by birthright alone.
And his wife, Daisy, just sits there and winks ferociously at Nick.
Yeah.
She doesn't take a single word Tom says seriously, but she is fundamentally bound to him. Daisy is such a complex figure. Nick describes her low, thrilling voice, a voice that promises gay, exciting things. But the moment she gets Nick alone, her worldview reveals itself to be incredibly dark.
Very dark.
Yeah. She asks Nick if he wants to know what she said when her daughter was born.
Ah, the beautiful little fool monologue. It's one of the most revealing moments in the entire text. Daisy confesses that when she woke up from the ether after giving birth and found out it was a girl, she turned her head away and wept. She said, "I'm glad it's a girl.
Yeah.
And I hope she'll be a fool. That's the best thing a girl can be in this world, a beautiful little fool."
It completely strips away the airy, bubbly socialite persona. She tells Nick, "I think everything's terrible anyhow. I've been everywhere and seen everything and done everything." She isn't this vacuous creature floating on a cloud.
Not at all. That monologue reveals her profound disillusionment. Daisy is acutely, painfully aware of her reality. She's trapped in a gilded cage with a serial adulterer, a man who is both physically intimidating and emotionally vacant. She performs the role of the cynical, airy socialite, because to actually drop the performance, to face the stark reality of her marriage and her limited options as a woman in that society, even a wealthy one, would be completely unbearable.
Right.
Being a fool isn't an insult, it's a survival strategy. It's a defense mechanism against the pain of awareness.
It's a heady realization. And from those manicured lawns and wine-colored rugs of East Egg, the text physically and thematically forces us through the wasteland that actually fuels all this wealth. If you want to go to New York from the eggs, you have to take the train. And that means you have to pass through the Valley of Ashes?
Yeah, it's situated right between the wealth of West Egg and the towering ambition of New York City. The test describes it as a fantastic farm where ashes grow like wheat into ridges and hills and grotesque gardens. It's a place where the men themselves seem made of ash, crumbling through the powdery air.
And brooding over this entire dumping ground are the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg.
Yes, the billboard.
It's this gigantic billboard left behind by some wild oculist to drum up business, and it just faded there. Enormous, disembodied blue eyes with retinas a yard high, looking out from yellow spectacles, staring relentlessly at the bleak dust. It is haunting. What is the mechanism behind this place? Why does this story need to drag us through the dirt?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the Valley of Ashes is the literal and metaphorical collateral damage of the American dream. It is the industrial underbelly, the exhaust pipe of the Roaring Twenties.
Wow, the exhaust pipe.
Right. The lavish wealth of the eggs, the pristine white dresses of Daisy and Jordan, the roaring cars, the endless champagne, all of it is made possible by the labor and the literal burning of resources that happens in this valley. The ash is the physical byproduct of their glittering lives. The elite throw their trash over their shoulders, and it lands here.
And the people trapped there are treated like byproducts, too. This is where we meet George and Myrtle Wilson. Tom forces Nick off the train because he wants to show off his mistress. They go into Wilson's garage. George is described as a blonde, spiritless man, anemic, covered in a veil of white ash and dust. He literally blends into the cement walls of his own failing business. He's a ghost of a man.
While his wife, Myrtle, is the exact opposite. She carries her surplus flesh sensuously. She has this intense, smoldering vitality. She isn't traditionally beautiful, but she is desperate for escape. She sees Tom Buchanan as her literal ticket out of the ash heaps. The text notes that she walks right through her husband as if he were a ghost to shake Tom's hand.
It makes you wonder about the complicity of the characters. Myrtle isn't just a passive victim of her environment. She is actively leveraging Tom to climb out of it. Tom casually orders her to get on the next train in New York. And the trip into the city is deeply disturbing. Myrtle insists on buying a dog from a man on the street. It's a total impulse buy. I want to get one of those dogs for the apartment, she says.
Just like that.
Yeah, and Tom pays $10 for an Airedale, telling the seller to go and buy 10 more dogs with it.
The mechanism of that transaction is incredibly revealing. It highlights how the wealthy treat living things as mere accessories. A dog isn't a companion, it's a prop to decorate an apartment. And this objectification escalates when they get at the apartment Tom keeps for Myrtle on 158th Street.
Oh, the apartment party.
Yes. The living room is crowded with tapestried furniture, entirely too large for it. It's totally claustrophobic. They invite Myrtle's sister, Catherine, and the neighbors, the McKees, up for a party. And as the endless bottles of whiskey flow, we watch Myrtle undergo a grotesque psychological transformation.
I see Myrtle in that apartment like, someone today buying designer knockoffs and posting heavily filtered photos on social media to fake a luxurious lifestyle. She changes into an elaborate cream-colored chiffon dress, and suddenly her intense vitality turns into what Nick calls impressive hauteur.
Her whole personality shifts.
Completely. She starts complaining about the elevator boy, saying, "These people, you have to keep after them all the time." She is desperately trying to play the role of the elite, old money woman looking down on the lower classes, completely ignoring the fact that she lives over a garage in a literal ash heap.
She's trying on Tom's class like a costume. And it's incredibly sad, because she fundamentally misunderstands how class actually works in this world. She thinks having the chiffon dress in the New York apartment makes her equal to Tom. She thinks she has crossed the boundary. But the climax of the party brutally, violently corrects that illusion.
Yeah, they're arguing, and Myrtle starts shouting Daisy's name. Daisy, Daisy, Daisy. I'll say it whenever I want to. She is testing her perceived power. And Tom, well, he doesn't yell. He doesn't lose his temper in a fiery rage. He makes a short, deft movement and breaks her nose with his open hand. Just casual, devastating violence. Suddenly, there are bloody towels on the bathroom floor and a long, broken wail of pain.
We have to analyze the specific nature of that violence. Breaking Myrtle's nose isn't a crime of passion. It isn't a lover's quarrel. It is a casual, almost administrative reassertion of power.
Administrative. That's chilling.
It is. Tom hits her because she forgot her place. To Tom, Myrtle is an object he has rented for his amusement. She is a vacation from his real life. By invoking the name of his actual wife, Daisy, the representative of his real old money life, the object malfunctioned. She tried to bridge the gap between the Valley of Ashes and East Egg, and Tom used his physical dominance to violently throw her back into her place.
And amid all that bleeding and chaos, there's that puppy. The dog sits on the table looking with blind eyes through the smoke. Earlier, there was a dog biscuit decomposing apathetically in a saucer of milk. It's the perfect physical manifestation of that room's morality. A living thing bought on a whim, decomposing in the corner, much like the people Tom collects and discards. He breaks her nose and the party just dissolves. Nick walks out and ends up waiting for a train at 4 in the morning.
Having witnessed the devastating, careless privilege of old money with Tom and the brutal, desperate reality of no money with the Wilsons, the text finally allows us to step into the third sphere, the world of new money. We cross the lawn into the carefully constructed, luminous theater of Jay Gatsby.
And what a theater it is. The opulence isn't just wealthy, it's staggering and highly orchestrated. Every Friday, 5 crates of oranges and lemons arrive. Every Monday, they leave as pulpless halves. The caterers set up a bar with real brass rails. The orchestra isn't a polite 5-piece string band. It's a whole pit full of oboes and trombones and saxophones.
Massive production.
Huge. And the guests, people don't even wait to be invited. They just get into automobiles, bear out to Long Island, and end up at Gatsby's door, conducting themselves according to the rules of amusement parks.
It's a spectacle, deliberately designed to overwhelm the senses. But amidst all this swirling color and jazz, the host is a phantom. No one seems to know who he actually is. And in the absence of a real identity, the guests eagerly fill the void with rumors.
The rumors are wild. 2 girls in yellow dresses lean in and whisper that they heard Gatsby killed a man once. Another insists he was a German spy during the war. Someone else says he grew up in Germany. There's this romantic speculation that thrives on the mystery. It's like he's a myth before he's even a man.
To find the man behind the myth, Nick and Jordan Baker go searching and wander into Gatsby's high Gothic library. And this is where they encounter a stout, middle-aged man with enormous owl-eyed spectacles, completely drunk, staring at the shelves.
The owl-eyed man. He is absolutely marveling at the fact that the books are real. He says, absolutely real, have pages and everything. I thought that'd be a nice durable cardboard. He compares Gatsby to a regular David Belasco, a famous theatrical producer, for going to the trouble of getting real books. But then he points out the most important detail of the entire room. Gatsby didn't cut the pages.
This is a profound metaphor for the entire mechanism of Gatsby's life. In those days, books were bound in a way that required the reader to literally slice the pages apart with a knife in order to read them. The uncut pages mean the books have never been opened. They are entirely unread. The library is a perfect stand-in for Gatsby himself. The facade is authentic. He spent the astronomical amount of money required. The books are physically real, but there is absolutely no depth to the persona. He hasn't engaged with the knowledge inside. He has simply purchased the appearance of heritage and intellect.
He bought the set dressing, but he doesn't know the script. And shortly after that, Nick finally meets the producer of this show. He's sitting at a table with a man about his age, talking about wet, gray little villages in France during the war. The man invites Nick to try out his new hydroplane the next morning. Nick apologizes and says he hasn't even seen the host yet, and the man smiles and says, "I'm Gatsby."
Look at how Nick describes that smile. It's one of those rare smiles with a quality of eternal reassurance in it. It faces a whole external world for an instant, and then concentrates on you with an irresistible prejudice in your favor. It understands you just as far as you want to be understood, believes in you as you would like to believe in yourself.
I compare Gatsby's smile to a perfect high-end customer service interaction. It gives you exactly what you want to see. It validates your entire existence for a brief second, making you feel like the absolute most important person in the room, and then it completely shuts off. Because right after the smile vanishes, Nick realizes he's looking at an elegant young roughneck whose elaborate formality of speech just misses being absurd. The emotional labor of the smile ends, and the rough reality underneath peeks through.
The mask slips for a fraction of a second, and Gatsby is highly aware that he needs to aggressively control his narrative to prevent those slips. Later in the summer, he takes Nick for a drive into the city in his monstrous cream-colored car and decides he needs to tell Nick what he calls God's truth about his life.
Which is the most absurd, forced backstory imaginable. He claims he's the son of wealthy people in the Middle West, all dead now. When Nick asks what part of the Middle West, Gatsby says San Francisco, which is just geographically hilarious.
Yeah, not the Midwest at all.
Right. He claims he was educated at Oxford because all his ancestors were educated there. He says he lived like a young Rajah in all the capitals of Europe, Paris, Venice, Rome, collecting jewels, chiefly rubies, hunting big game, and trying to forget a sad thing that happened to him. Then he says he was a war hero, promoted to major, and pulls out a literal piece of metal on a ribbon from Little Montenegro and a photograph of himself playing cricket at Oxford to prove it.
It reads like a dime novel from the 19th century.
Yeah.
But we have to ask the mechanical question, why? If he's throwing these massive parties, if he has all this visible wealth, why not just be the mysterious rich guy? Why the desperate, sweaty need to prove he's from old money?
So what does this all mean? Because being a mysterious rich guy isn't enough for the specific target he's aiming at. New money buys you a mansion in West Egg, but it doesn't buy you respectability in East Egg. He knows his wealth is illegitimate, and he's frantically trying to build a fortress of respectability using cheap, borrowed bricks.
Exactly. And the profound illegitimacy of his wealth is fully exposed the moment they reach the city, and Gatsby introduces Nick to Meyer Wolfsheim at lunch.
Meyer Wolfsheim, the man with cufflinks made out of human molars. Just casually wearing human teeth on his wrists is a fashion statement.
It's such a disturbing detail.
Very. He talks affectionately about the night his friend Rosie Rosenthal was shot outside the old Metropole. He plays this perfect aristocrat with Nick, but the second Wolfsheim enters the frame, the silk curtains completely drop. You realize the champagne and the hydroplanes are bought with blood money.
Wolfsheim's presence shatters any lingering romantic illusion Nick or the reader might have about where Gatsby's money comes from. When Nick asks who Wolfsheim is, Gatsby coolly replies, "He's the man who fixed the World Series back in 1919. Nick is staggered. It never occurred to him that one man could play with the faith of 50 million people. This is a crucial historical anchor in the text. The 1919 Black Sox scandal profoundly damaged the American psyche. It proved that even the national pastime, the symbol of American purity, was commodified and corruptible. By tying Gatsby to the man who orchestrated that, Fitzgerald is showing us that Gatsby is swimming in deep, dark criminal waters. His entire empire is built on bootlegging, gambling syndicates, and the corruption of institutions."
So we have all this mechanism, the massive parties, the hydroplane, the criminal enterprise with Wolfsheim, the frantic Oxford backstory, but none of it is random. It's all highly targeted. The story finally moves from the massive public spectacle to the deeply private motivation behind it all. Every single gear in this machine is turning for one reason.
We learn the truth not from Gatsby himself, but from Jordan Baker. She tells Nick the story of Daisy Fay back in Louisville in 1917. Daisy was 18, the most popular girl in town, dressing in white, driving a white roadster. And the officer sitting in her car, looking at her the way every young girl wants to be looked at, was a young lieutenant named Jay Gatsby.
They had an intense romance before he shipped out for the war. But the timeline moves on. By the next year, Daisy is engaged to Tom Buchanan of Chicago, and Jordan gives us this incredible scene on the eve of the wedding. Tom gives Daisy a string of pearls valued at $350,000. But Jordan finds Daisy lying on her bed, drunk as a monkey, holding a letter from Gatsby in one hand and the pearls in the other. Daisy cries out, "Take him downstairs and give him back." Say Daisy's changed her mind. She takes the letter into the bath and squeezes it into a wet ball until it comes to pieces like snow.
It's a moment of sheer, terrifying panic. In that bathroom, Daisy realizes the transaction she is making. She's trading passionate love for absolute financial security. But the societal pressure, the sheer, undeniable momentum of Tom's wealth and status is too strong. The panic subsides. The next day, she marries Tom without a shiver and starts her life as an East Egg elite.
And 5 years later, Gatsby has purposefully bought the mansion directly across the bay from Daisy. He throws the parties hoping she'll just wander in one night, drawn by the lights. When she doesn't, he uses Jordan to ask Nick to invite Daisy over for tea so Gatsby can casually come over and show her his house.
The modesty of the demand is what shakes Nick. Gatsby waited 5 years and bought a mansion to dispense starlight to casual moths, all just so he could come over to a stranger's garden for tea in the afternoon.
So the day of the tea party arrives. It's pouring rain, which perfectly mirrors the suffocating anxiety of the scene. Gatsby is utterly terrified. He's wearing a white flannel suit, a silver shirt, and a gold-colored tie. He is dressed like literal currency. He sends a man in a raincoat to literally cut Nick's grass to ensure the stage is perfect. And when Daisy finally arrives, Gatsby panics, retreats out the back door, and knocks on the front door to make it look like he just dropped by. He comes in, pale as death, and leans against a defunct mantelpiece clock. His head leans back so far, the clock tilts dangerously, and Gatsby catches it with trembling fingers.
This is one of the most brilliant symbolic actions in the text. Gatsby is literally trying to catch a falling clock. It represents his entire psychological state. He is obsessed with stopping time, with catching it before it falls and shatters, with rewinding the past 5 years to return to 1917. But the text explicitly notes that the clock is already defunct. It's dead. It doesn't tick anymore. You cannot manipulate time the way you manipulate money, no matter how desperately you try to catch it.
It's agonizing to read, but eventually the sheer awkwardness fades. They reconnect, and Gatsby is glowing. He takes him on a tour of his mansion to show Daisy the empire he built for her. He shows her the Marie Antoinette music rooms, the sunken baths. And then in his bedroom, he opens his massive cabinets and starts throwing his shirts on the table. Shirts of sheer linen, thick silk, fine flannel, in coral and apple green and lavender. The soft, rich heat mounts higher and higher. And suddenly, Daisy bends her head into the shirts and begins to cry stormily. She sobs. They're such beautiful shirts. It makes me sad because I've never seen such beautiful shirts before.
And we know she isn't crying over the fabric. She is crying over the realization of what Gatsby has built solely for her. She is mourning the life she could have had with him, the lost time, the sheer overwhelming weight of his devotion manifested in these physical objects. It's the tragedy of realizing that her practical compromise 5 years ago cost her this kind of monumental, passionate dedication.
After the shirts, they look out the window across the bay. Gatsby tells Daisy, "If it wasn't for the mist, we could see your home across the bay. You always have a green light that burns all night at the end of your dock." And Nick observes that the colossal significance of that light has now vanished forever.
The tragedy of the green light is that once Gatsby actually has Daisy in his house, standing next to him, the fantasy must collapse into reality. For 5 years, that light was a star, a symbol of infinite possibility and idealized perfect love. Now, it's just a green light on a dock. His count of enchanted objects diminishes by 1.
I compare the green light to cracking a package online for weeks. You order something you've wanted forever. The anticipation, watching the little truck icon move across the map, the fantasy of how this item will fundamentally change your life, it's intoxicating. But the exact moment the delivery guy hands you the cardboard box, the magic vanishes. It's just a physical thing in your hands. Now you have to figure out where to put it.
That analogy hits the core mechanism perfectly. Because when the package is in transit, it represents infinite potential. It could be anything. But once it's in your hands, it is bound by the laws of physics and the limitations of reality. Gatsby's ultimate tragedy is that he prefers the tracking number to the actual box. A dream realized is, in a very real sense, a dream lost.
It makes you wonder about your own life, doesn't it? We all have that green light, that thing we're convinced will fix everything once we finally possess it. But once Gatsby possesses his, the text doesn't let him rest. With the fantasy finally achieved, the narrative violently pulls back the curtain to reveal the raw material from which Jay Gatsby was actually forged. We finally get the truth of his origin.
We learn he is not from San Francisco. His real name is James Gatz, from North Dakota, born to shiftless and unsuccessful farm people. His imagination never really accepted them as his parents at all. The text says that Jay Gatsby of West Egg sprang from his platonic conception of himself.
This raises an important question. What exactly does Fitzgerald mean by a platonic conception of himself?
Well, in Platonic philosophy, the physical world we live in is just a flawed, temporary shadow of an ideal, eternal, perfect realm. Gatz rejected his physical reality, the poverty, the dirt, his biological parents, and worshipped his own idealized, perfect self-image. He invented the sort of Jay Gatsby that a 17-year-old boy would invent, and he remained fiercely, fanatically faithful to that illusion to the end. The text uses deeply religious language here. It says he was a son of God going about his father's business, which was the service of a vast, vulgar, and meretricious beauty.
It's the American dream taken to a theological extreme. He literally created himself. Right. He is his own God. And the turning point came when he was loafing on the shore of Lake Superior and saw Dan Cody's yacht drop anchor.
Dan Cody, right?
Cody was a millionaire from the Nevada silver fields, a pioneer debauchee. Young Gatz rode out to warn him of a win, introduced himself as Jay Gatsby, and Cody took him in. For 5 years, Gatsby traveled the world with Cody, getting his education and wealth, acquiring the outward shell of a rich man, and learning to avoid alcohol because he saw what it did to Cody.
He acquired the shell, the visible markers of wealth. But having the shell isn't the same as having the breeding or the social intuition. And we see this clash of old and new money perfectly illustrated when Tom Buchanan and a couple of his wealthy East Egg friends drop by Gatsby's house on horseback. Gatsby is deeply affected that Tom is there. The woman in the group, after a few drinks, cordially invites Gatsby to supper with them. Gatsby, desperate to enter their world and prove his legitimacy, accepts.
But he misses the social cue completely. Mr. Sloan, the other man on horseback, is clearly hostile and doesn't want him there. Tom says to Nick, doesn't he know she doesn't want him? Tom is appalled that Gatsby doesn't understand it's a fake, polite invitation, not a real one. Gatsby goes inside to get his coat, and while he's gone, they literally ride off and leave him behind.
It is agonizing to read because it exposes his profound vulnerability. No matter how many millions Gatsby has, no matter how many silk shirts he buys or crates of oranges he squeezes, he fundamentally lacks the invisible social codes of the elite. He doesn't speak their silent language. And this disconnect deepens fatally when Daisy finally attends one of Gatsby's sprawling parties.
She absolutely hates it. She is appalled by West Egg. She finds its raw vigor and its chaotic mix of Broadway stars and bootleggers completely offensive to her old money sensibilities. She only has a good time for the half hour she is alone with Gatsby. And Gatsby is devastated. He tells Nick he feels far away from her. He says she didn't like it. She didn't understand.
And this leads to Gatsby revealing his ultimate impossible delusion. He tells Nick he is going to fix everything just the way it was before. Nick, seeing the danger, gently warns him, "I wouldn't ask too much of her. You can't repeat the past." And Gatsby cries out incredulously, "Can't repeat the past? Why, of course you can."
Here's where it gets really interesting. He wants Daisy to go to Tom and say, "I never loved you." He wants to wipe out the last 5 years entirely, as if the marriage and the child never existed. Think about the absolute insanity of this demand. Gatsby's entire fortune, his mansion, his cars, they are all built on adapting to the modern, ruthless, rapidly changing reality of 1920s bootlegging. He is a brilliant, modern operator when it comes to business, yet his emotional core is completely detached from reality. He is stuck in a time loop, demanding that a woman erase her own history to fit into his 1917 fantasy.
That is the crucial tension of the entire novel. Gatsby's love is profoundly selfish. He doesn't love the complex, flawed, married Daisy of 1922 who has a child and a history. He loves the unblemished, idealized idea of Daisy from 1917. He wants to wedge his unutterable visions into her perishable breath. He wants to turn a human being into a static symbol. And this tension between Gatsby's delusion and the brutal reality of the world reaches its breaking point in Chapter 7.
The boiling point. It happens on the hottest day of the summer. The heat is oppressive, simmering, almost unbearable. It isn't just weather, it's a literary device mirroring the suffocating emotional tension in the room. Gatsby and Nick take the train to East Egg for lunch at the Buchanans. And right there, in the stifling dining room, Daisy looks at Gatsby and says, "You always look so cool." She tells him she loves him right in front of Tom. Tom sees the exchange and he is astounded.
And shortly after, as they're trying to figure out what to do to escape the heat, Gatsby makes a profound realization about Daisy's voice. Nick mentions that her voice is indiscreet, and Gatsby simply says, "Her voice is full of money."
I mean, let's pause on that. Her voice is full of money.
It is the Rosetta Stone for understanding Daisy, and for understanding Gatsby's obsession with her. Gatsby finally identifies the source of her inexhaustible charm. It's not just romance or beauty, it's the literal jingle of inherited wealth. It's the symbol song of a king's daughter high in a white palace. Her voice promises endless security, privilege, and a carelessness that Gatsby, who had to claw his way up from a dirty North Dakota farm, fundamentally lacks and desperately desires. He isn't just in love with the woman, he's in love with the impenetrable safety of her class.
The tension in the house is unbearable, and Daisy insists they all go to town. They decide to drive. And Tom, in a brilliant tactical power move, insists they swap cars. Tom takes Gatsby's flashy yellow car, and Gatsby takes Tom's sensible blue coupe with Daisy. On the way to the city, Tom, driving the yellow car, stops for gas at Wilson's garage in the Valley of Ashes.
And this is where the parallel tragedies align with devastating precision. Tom learns that George Wilson is physically sick. Why? Because George has finally figured out that his wife, Myrtle, has a secret life. Wilson announces he is taking Myrtle and moving west. In a single hour, Tom's wife and his mistress are slipping precipitously from his control. The panic sets in. His entire world order is threatened.
They all end up renting a parlor suite in the Plaza Hotel in New York. It's 4 o'clock, the room is stifling, they're drinking whiskey to beat the heat, and from the ballroom below they can hear Mendelssohn's Wedding March playing. It's a surreal, claustrophobic setting for the final showdown. Tom stops pretending, stops the polite social dance, and directly interrogates Gatsby.
Look at Tom's strategy here. He doesn't attack Gatsby's love for Daisy first. He attacks Gatsby's legitimacy. He exposes the Oxford backstory as a half-truth. Gatsby was there for 5 months after the armistice, through a military program, not as a wealthy heir. Then Tom goes for the jugular. He reveals his investigation into Gatsby's affairs. He exposes the side street drugstores where Gatsby and Wolfsham sell grain alcohol over the counter. He calls him a common swindler, a bootlegger.
Wait, if Gatsby's entire current identity is just a flawless performance of wealth, what happens when Tom strips off the silk shirts? Who is actually pulling the levers backstage? Gatsby tries to defend himself, but he insists on pushing his delusion. He tells Tom, "Your wife doesn't love you. She's never loved you. She loves me." He demands that Daisy say she never loved Tom.
But Daisy breaks down. The weight of erasing her past is too much. She cries, "I did love him once, but I loved you too." She looks at Gatsby and tells him the most devastating truth. "You want too much."
So he isn't just trying to steal a man's wife, he's literally trying to assassinate the last 5 years of history. He wants a do-over, and Daisy refuses to give it to him.
Because she can't. It's an impossible demand. And that is the exact moment the illusion shatters completely, the glass breaks. Gatsby's demand for absolute purity, for a completely unblemished past, destroys his chance at the present. And Tom recognizes his victory immediately. He doesn't win because he's a better man or because Daisy loves him more. He wins because he leverages his systemic power.
He reminds Daisy that Gatsby's world is unstable, dangerous, and criminal. He mentions Walter Chase, a man who went to jail working for Gatsby. Tom's world, despite his cruelty, his racism, and his infidelity, is a fortress of old money and societal approval. It's safe.
Exactly. When Tom sees that Daisy is terrified and drawing further and further into herself, retreating back into the safety of her class, he delivers the ultimate insult. He says, "You two start on home, Daisy," in Mr. Gatsby's car. He intentionally sends them back together to prove that Gatsby is absolutely no longer a threat. The presumptuous little flirtation is over.
I picture Tom in that moment like a predator playing with its food. It's the ultimate display of dominance. Tom knows Gatsby's illusion is dead. So that flashy yellow car, it's no longer a chariot carrying the Golden Girl away to a magical kingdom. It's just a ride home for a defeated man.
And that shattered emotional reality in the hotel room immediately manifests into physical violence and death on the road back through the Valley of Ashes.
Nick, Tom, and Jordan are driving back a little while later in Tom's blue coupe. They approach Wilson's garage and see a crowd gathered. A horrific accident has occurred. Michaelis, the young Greek who runs the coffee joint next door, witnesses it. Myrtle Wilson, who had been locked upstairs by George, broke out and ran into the dusk toward the road. She saw the yellow car coming. Remember, Tom was driving the yellow car earlier that afternoon when he stopped for gas.
She thought Tom was in the car coming back for her. And we must unpack the grotesque description of her death, because it is structurally vital. The text says the car wavered tragically, struck her, and sped off. When they reach her body, her shirtwaist is torn open, her left breast is swinging loose like a flap, her mouth wide open and ripped at the corners.
It's so visceral, it's jarring how violently Fitzgerald describes this.
It is violently punitive. The narrative violently punishes the character who tried the hardest to climb out of her class. Myrtle tried to escape the ash heaps, she tried to claim the privileges of East Egg, and she is physically ripped apart by the very machine, Gatsby's opulent, monstrous yellow car that represents the wealth she so desperately desired. The automobile in the 1920s was a symbol of freedom for the rich, but here it acts as a literal weapon of the class system, crushing the poor who try to get in the way.
Tom arrives, sees the body, and is genuinely shaken. He cries over Myrtle. But watch his self-preservation instinct kick in, it's instant. He forcefully grabs George Wilson, who is moaning, "Oh my God," and tells him, "That yellow car I was driving this afternoon wasn't mine. I haven't seen it all afternoon." He instantly throws Gatsby under the bus to save himself and points the desperate, grieving husband directly at his rival.
It is the ultimate act of cowardice and class solidarity. Tom ensures his own safety by sacrificing the outsider. And meanwhile, where is Gatsby?
Nick takes a taxi back to the Buchanan's house and finds Gatsby hiding in the bushes in his pink suit. Gatsby asks if there was trouble, and Nick tells him the woman was killed. And here is the twist that recontextualizes the whole tragedy. Gatsby reveals that Daisy was driving the car. She was nervous, thought driving would steady her, lost her nerve when Myrtle ran out and hit her. But Gatsby insists, "Of course I'll say I was. He is still protecting her." He tells Nick he's going to wait in the bushes all night to make sure Tom doesn't hurt her.
He is keeping a vigil over a dead dream. Because while Gatsby is in the bushes, clinging to the last shreds of his knight in shining armor fantasy, Nick sneaks a look through the pantry window. And what does he see? He sees Daisy and Tom sitting opposite each other at the kitchen table. There's a plate of cold fried chicken and 2 bottles of ale between them. Tom is talking intently, his hand covering hers. She is nodding.
Nick notes they aren't happy, but they aren't unhappy either. There's an unmistakable air of natural intimacy. They are conspiring.
They are retreating into their money and their vast carelessness. They are closing ranks. Gatsby is outside in the dark, willing to take the fall for manslaughter, and Daisy is inside eating cold fried chicken with her husband, sealing Gatsby's fate. They are survivors in the ugliest sense. They let other people clean up their messes.
The next morning, Gatsby has waited all night for a signal from Daisy that never came. He finally tells Nick the full truth of his past with Dan Cody. He still can't let go of the illusion that Daisy loved him most. The gardener comes by and says he's going to drain the pool because the leaves are going to start falling and clog the pipes, but Gatsby delays it. He hasn't used the pool all summer, and he wants to use it just once.
The clinging to summer, the delaying of the draining pool, it's his final, tragic attempt to stop time, to hold off the autumn, the reality, the end.
Nick has to leave for the city to work. He misses 2 trains because he doesn't want to leave Gatsby. Finally, he turns around and shouts across the lawn, "They're a rotten crowd. You're worth a whole damn bunch put together."
It's the only compliment Nick ever gave him. And it's a vital moment of judgment from our narrator, who originally claimed to reserve all judgments.
But I have to challenge this. Think about this. Why does Nick say Gatsby is worth the whole damn bunch when Gatsby is a liar, a bootlegger, an associate of Meyer Wolfsheim, and a man trying to break up a family? How is he better than Tom and Daisy?
It's a profound moral distinction the text makes. Despite Gatsby's massive flaws, the fake backstory, the criminal ties, his underlying motivation was hope and love. He corrupted himself, yes, but he did it in service of a dream, a grail. He threw himself into his illusion with a creative passion. Tom and Daisy, on the other hand, have no dreams. They only have appetites. They are cynical, careless, and hollow. Gatsby's capacity for wonder, however misplaced, elevates him above their sterile wealth.
And while Gatsby waits in his pool for a phone call from Daisy that will never come, George Wilson descends into madness. He stares out the window at the giant eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg emerging from the dawn. He tells Michaelis how he confronted Myrtle before she died. He took her to the window, pointed at the billboard, and said, "God knows what you've been doing. You may fool me, but you can't fool God."
Wilson's confusion of an advertising billboard with the eyes of God perfectly encapsulates the tragic spiritual void of this society. Capitalism and consumerism have completely replaced spirituality and morality. God is dead, replaced by the brooding, faded eyes of an oculist's advertisement looking over a wasteland of ash.
And Wilson, believing the owner of the yellow car is the man who slept with his wife and murdered her, tracks Gatsby down to his house in West Egg, bringing the violence of the Valley of Ashes directly into the sanctuary of New Money, which sets the stage for the inevitable tragedy we know is coming at the pool. Let's recap this incredible journey. We have seen how a boy named James Gatz from North Dakota built an empire of bootleg alcohol and pure imagination, forging the persona of Jay Gatsby, only to have it completely crushed against the impenetrable wall of inherited wealth and his own impossible demands on time. He wanted to repeat the past, and the past destroyed him.
The text challenges us deeply. It forces us to examine the illusions that drive us and the mechanisms of the society we live in.
It makes you wonder about your own life, doesn't it? Look closely at your own motivations. Are you chasing a green light that has lost its actual meaning? Are you putting all your energy, your money, your time into constructing a flawless facade for a daisy? Whether that's a person, a job, or a status symbol that doesn't actually exist in the way you've dreamed it.
And consider the people who survive this story completely unscathed. Tom and Daisy. They retreat into their money. They face absolutely no legal or financial consequences for their actions. Myrtle is dead. Gatsby is doomed, Wilson is broken, and the Buchanans just pack their bags and move on to somewhere else. The text forces us to ask a deeply uncomfortable question about modern success. Does the world actually reward the hopeful dreamers, the ones with a capacity for wonder? Or is the game ultimately fundamentally rigged to protect those who are most insulated, most careless, and most willing to let others take the fall?
That is exactly what we have to leave you to mull over today. Thank you so much for joining us as we step backstage on this deep dive. Because as we've seen, once you see the trapdoors and the wires of the American dream, you can never look at the glittering illusion the exact same way again.